So welcome everyone to the November 2025 Focus Series. Today we're focusing on just a recap of the year. We're going to look at all the features that were launched this year, but mostly focusing on the meaningful conversations that they enabled. Now, if we think back to 2025, the asset map development team kept us quite busy with a lot of new features over the year. And for each of those, we had a dedicated focus series where we went through, how best to use each of those features, as well as, what conversations they enable. So today I'm not going to go into each one in detail, but rather I want to focus in on how your fellow planners in the community are using each of those features. So how is it being used in practice? And we know that one of the goals is to have more of these meaningful conversations with clients, throughout the journey and with more clients. But time is always the challenge. Do we have enough time and how do we do it smarter? So I'm also going to touch on how we can use the features to scale, to have these conversations more at scale, but in a way that creates space for that personalization. So we want to have those personal conversations, but we want to be able to scale that, have it with more clients and more conversations and with more clients. And then I'm also going to share some stories that you have shared, with us from your engagements with clients and the impact some of these conversations have had for clients as well. So without further ado, let's start. So one of the first developments that was added this year is Stencil Library. And we've always had stencils in Asset Map, and you've had the ability to create stencils or templates and apply that to your households in Asset Map. But what we added this year was a library of stencils specific for the UK clients, where you can use a stencil directly from the library, or you can even copy it across from the library to your personal library. And from there, you can edit it, make it your own, add blocks, add notes. And I want to talk a little bit about how this is being used in practice. So firstly, planners are using Stencil Library in creating households. So selecting from the library an appropriate stencil and applying that to the client's household. And this does a number of things. Firstly, it makes capturing easier and quicker because you've got all the blocks there and you're really just personalizing it for the client. But secondly, it really helps to identify gaps. It brings clients more into the engagement where they share more about what are the things they have that maybe we don't know about. And that leads to interesting conversations and meaningful engagements around what potential gaps they have and how we can take that forward. But another interesting way I've seen this used in practice is how, planners are linking these different functionalities and features together. So planners are now sending clients discovery, where we know the client completes who are the people that are important to them, what are their assets, liabilities, incomes, and what's top of mind for them. That all comes back in and creates the map. At that point, planners are applying a stencil to highlight where there's potential gaps or more information they'd like to get from the client, and then sharing that via the client portal to say, I've created a map based on what you've shared, added a few blocks for more information. Won't you please go into the client portal and fill in that additional information? So that's a nice, interesting way of using it. How do we scale it though? And here I really want to encourage you to create your own stencils, either using ones from the library and then personalizing it to suit your practice and your clients, or building it from scratch yourself. But the key thing here is that you can create those stencils and put notes into the stencil. So when you apply it to a client, those notes carry across. And we've seen, a planner using that in a great way where he has sort of a master stencil that has, everything he wants to talk to clients about throughout the client journey. And in the notes, he's put additional information as well as links to where they can get more information online, either about a specific product or about a specific company, or even links to government websites to, work out what your state pension will be or something like that. So, using it really to the max and then applying that to clients and allowing them, those notes will automatically be in the reporting. So the client always has access to that via the reports to click on the links and find out more information. And so the planner is managing that journey with the client through the use of stencils. And then I just want to share a client story on this. We had a planner recently share with us, he went to meet with a client. She's in her 70s and had a bit of a a rough couple of months, a couple of deaths in the family, and going through just quite a difficult time at the moment. And part of that is just feeling overwhelmed with her finances, not specifically financially astute, and now having to sort of manage it herself. And the planet, created an asset map with what he knew, applied a stencil, and so much more came out of that conversation. Multiple bank accounts that he wasn't aware of, as well as a loan with their child, and the impact of that. And that just really highlighted conversations and estate planning conversations that he could have with the client. So just again, using the stencils, we always hear feedback that it's just amazing the conversations that it creates space for. So go ahead and create your stencil, add in notes, put in links to more information, because once you've set it up, you can just reuse it with clients. The conversation is still completely unique and personal to that client, but makes it easier to scale that. Then another addition we added this year is legal contracts. And whilst we've always had, blocks on Asset Map and in stencils to sort of highlight this discussion, the addition of adding legal contracts in its own separate space gives us the ability to just record what contracts are in place, who the role players are, any pertinent details, and add into the notes things like, where is the will stored? Is it in our home office in the third drawer? You can go ahead and pop that into the notes. So in practice, we've seen planners use this in a number of ways, obviously to record those contracts, whether it's the will, last wishes, any other legal contracts that the client might have. But in addition to that, you can now select the will as an example for beneficiary designation, which means that when you are creating the beneficiaries of an investment or a product, you can also allocate it to be dealt with in terms of the will. You can also link these legal contracts to relationship maps, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into relationship maps in a bit. But what I would encourage you here on the scale, to be able to have this conversation with more clients, is to add in these blocks to your stencils. And we added a new insurance type called Other. And this gives you the ability to add an insurance financial without putting a specific amount in there. So you don't need to put in that floating one that we used to use. You can now just leave the value section blank, and it'll just add that tile onto the map. And this is great addition to your stencils, because it really just highlights that conversation when you're sitting in front of a client. Is the will up to date? Are there any other contracts or forms or anything that we need to complete? And just putting it on there, highlighting it, and opening up that discussion. So please incorporate that into your stencil, add those blocks. How the two work together is that the financial tile is to really highlight the discussion. But once you've had the conversation and it is in place, then you can go ahead and pop that into the legal section, and you can always remove the financial tile thereafter. But at least you've added it on and can draw attention to that. The client stories we hear on legal is just that clients really love having everything in one place. There's such a comfort feeling that clients feel when they can see on the map, here's my will, there's my last wishes, everything is noted. I can get more information in the notes if I need it, but there's a real comfort level about being able to see everything on one page and knowing that I can share that with my loved ones if need be, and they can also see where everything is and that it's in control. There's really a sense of I'm in control when I can plot it on one page. The next feature I want to just highlight a little bit is relationship maps. So, we added this year, and this gives you the ability to, if we think of asset map, we think of, it shows all the members and all the entities up at the top, but then it focuses more on the financials within each of those individuals' own, as well as those trusts and businesses. But by using relationship maps, I can create a visual that shows the connection between all of the individuals. And in practice, we're seeing planners use this in a multitude of different ways. But one of them is just to unpack that family tree. Who are all the people that are part of this family? How are they connected? How are they connected to the trust, for example? I've seen the map used to show inheritance or gifting strategies, who's getting what and when. Because you can add text boxes, you can really create visuals of anything you want to show to clients. And it's great for structure conversations as well. You know, who owns the business? Who are the role players in the trust? How are they all connected to each other? And how are they connected to the different individuals? And when we think about, you know, how can we scale that? We have added a default relationship map. So once you've created an asset map for a client, and you've added all the members and all the trusts and businesses and all the financials, you can immediately click on relationship maps and there'll be a start of a map there. It'll show the primary clients, the spouse or partner. It'll show parents, grandparents, children, and grandchildren. And from there, you can move them around, draw links from one to another, add text boxes, and really depict any conversation that you're wanting to share with that client. And I have a good client story here where, you know, a planner was working with a client, but also with other role players. In this case, you know, there was a accountant that was part of the conversation as well. And the accountant sent a whole lot of documents around all these different structures and how it all fits together. And the planner thought, well, you know, I'm going to put it together in a relationship map so that when I engage with the clients and the accountant, I can share that to make sure I'm understanding the structure appropriately. It was so interesting when she sat down and had that conversation with them. They realized that there was a misunderstanding and some confusion between all three on how the structure actually was. And then they could make those changes, which obviously highlighted a lot of important information. So relationship maps is great for engaging the client, but especially when there's tax specialists, accountants, attorneys involved, you know, using the map to just bring everyone together around, is this the structure? Is this, you know, the plan that we have in place, and how do we move forward? Please, as I go through, if there's any questions, pop them into the chat and I will address them during or at the end of today. Then we go on to sidebar. Now, we added sidebar in this year initially to show members and financials, so that you could quickly add or view a member or view a financial on the side of the asset map page. So remember, previously it would pop up when you added a member or a financial and would actually sit in front of the map. But what we wanted to do was, if you think about how planners are engaging with clients at the moment, a lot of those meetings are happening remotely or in a room where there's a screen up and you're both looking at a screen. And similarly, you know, clients don't like to look at a report that's 30, 40 pages long, but in a similar way, when we're flipping between different screens and moving around a lot throughout an application, it can distract the clients and lead to the client sort of closing up and not engaging as much. So one of the reasons we introduced sidebar is to keep the focus on the map. So now you can add members, add financials, make changes in the sidebar while still having the map front and center in that engagement with the clients. And then this year, in addition, we added target maps and signals to that sidebar. And that's created a space for what we're calling one screen planning. And the idea is that you can, on one screen, answer what most clients want to know, which is, where am I today? How on track am I? And how do I take a step forward? And we can now do that by showing the map and the target map side by side on one screen. You can also click on that little eye icon. And what that does is it just grays out the map and highlights the financials that are being used in a specific target map, which just makes it really tangible. It connects my financials in my asset map with my plan in my target map. So the client can see exactly what's being used, or how the products and investments that they have are being used to fund the goals and what they want to achieve. So we're seeing lots of planners using it like this, you know, getting into that process of showing it all on one screen. This is where you are today. Let's make adjustments here on the right as need be, but how do we progress forward? And from a scaling point of view, you know, if you're in Asset Map and you open up the sidebar and you select a member, for example, and click on that Notes tab, then as you move around the map, clicking on other individuals or other financials, you'll see that it'll stay in the notes on the right-hand side. And this is great for you to be able to update notes while you're in the meeting with the client. Or if you've added notes to your stencil and they're there already, you can reflect that back to the client. Here's the most important information about this. Here's links to where you can get more information. let's update that with tasks that come out of the engagement or anything that we need to take the client forward. So it's a great way, is just using that sidebar and getting into the habit of sharing the screen with the asset map and the target maps and working through that conversation together with the clients. We have, the stories we've heard from planners here is that just clients are more engaged. There's something about just seeing it on one screen, not jumping around to different screens or through different pages, but being able to see it all on one page. Clients are leaning in, they're engaging more. What if I do this? What if I do that? And planners are able to have that conversation much more effectively, efficiently, and quickly, but take a client through a unique experience around where they are and where they want to be. Then these are two additions that came in during the year. One was the ability to add a milestone. And what we mean by that is being able to sort of date stamp what you're doing in the household today. So for example, if I'm meeting with a client today, I can click, I'm having an annual review with them. I can select that milestone. What it does is it just date stamps that a review was done on this household today. And I can always refer back to that in 6 months' time or a year's time. I can look at when was the last review of this particular household. So it's great in managing when changes are being made and what the purpose of that meeting is. And then secondly, on the reporting side, we added a couple of changes. One is all reports generated in AssetMap are automatically now recorded in AssetMap on the household. So at any point in time, you can go and look at a report from 2024 or from this year, and then going into the future as well. And we also added the ability for you to change the order of reporting. So it's not that fixed order. You can say, I want notes to be right at the top, or I want the balance sheet to be after the asset map. So you can rearrange your reports and even save those as layout templates, which means you could reuse it. So you can create, for new clients, I want this order with these certain chapters selected. But for a review client, maybe we want a different order with different chapters selected. We now have the ability to do both. And in practice, how planners are using the two of these two features together is that date stamping the engagement with the client. So in this example you're seeing now, we signed a milestone and I can view it. It was on the 19th of November. But then because the reports are also saved, I can see which report corresponds with that date. There we have the comprehensive report with the same date. So I can link the two to know of all the reports generated for this household, which is the one that was for that annual review. I can always refer back to it here. And then just showing again how you can move these chapters around, and you can save different layouts, selecting what you would prefer to include versus what you prefer to exclude. And you can save it either as your default template, or you can create multiple templates that you use. So I really suggest thinking about that, because that just makes things so much easier and quicker when you want to run a report. So just click the template you're looking for, everything is selected, and you can generate the report. From a client story point of view, what we're seeing in practice is planners are sharing reports to the client portal. And I think, this is great, not only for us to see the report history in AssetMap, but our clients can now log into the client portal and see the specific reports that you've shared with them. So they're not automatically shared to the portal. You select, for example, this report I want to share to the clients on the client portal, and then it's stored there in that client's client portal that they can access it whenever they like. It's also a great way for them to see progression. What was my report 2 years ago, a year ago, today? So start sharing those reports to the client portal, and I'll talk a little bit more about client portal now. And then one of our more recent developments was the addition of priorities. And I'm hearing so many interesting stories from planners about the conversations that it's uncovering, how clients are sharing more of what they actually want to achieve, what sits behind that for them, and how planners are refining that list based on what exactly a particular client's priorities are. So in practice, we're seeing, this is where you can uncover the priorities by working through the list or creating your own. And we're also seeing planners use it as a way of reflecting back to clients. So often, if you think about that review meeting prior to the review, you can go in and select the priorities as you understand the client's priorities. This is the things that we want to achieve. And then as part of that review, just reflect that back to the client. Are these the priorities that we want to achieve, or have they changed? Are there more priorities we want to add to this list? What sort of importance do we want to assign to each of them, and which is of top importance that we can start reordering in the level of importance for the clients? And this is just opening up some amazing conversations where clients are sharing, actually, this is what my priority is. So I would encourage you to scale it, to start including that in your review conversations. Go in as prep for review, update the priorities, and share that with the clients in that engagement, and unpack, are these the right ones? Are we on the same page? Are there others? And see the conversations that it opens up. So Planner shared a story with us a couple of weeks ago. We went to go see a client, spouses, they're elderly, and he's been more the financial astute partner in the marriage. So he has lots of investments, and all the paperwork is sitting all over the place. And one of the priorities the planner listed was ensuring your spouse is okay financially in the event of death. And through this conversation, the client said, yes, that is important, but I think, that she'll be okay financially. But what's actually more important to me is I have this fear that if I pass away first, she's not going to know where everything is. That transition is going to be difficult. And I want to make that as simple as I can. So you can see by just opening up that priority conversation, clients share more, and we get to sort of the heart of what sits below that, what fears or aspirations. And then, of course, together they created the map, added all on there, even, documented where all the documents are, so that the client knew that it is all in hand and in control. So I love that story. Then Client Portal. So Client Portal actually launched in 2024, but we've added to it in 2025. One of the main things that everyone requested was the ability for clients to edit or suggest changes on the portal. So that was added this year, and we're seeing just amazing stories of how clients are using that and engaging with that, how planners have brought that into their process. And one of the ways they're doing that is just engaging prior to review, sending the client the link to the portal, saying, we're about to have this discussion. Please, can you go in, have a look, let me know what's changed. And their clients can update their income. They can update their property values, their mortgage values, any other details that they want to share with you. So they can add and edit. But remember, it doesn't change it on your side. You're notified via email that the client is suggesting changes. You can then review the changes that the client is suggesting and accept or reject those changes. So you remain in control throughout that process. You can also control exactly what clients can see on the client portal, what they can edit, as well as, and you can also change that over time. But it's just a great way of sharing with the client, collaborating with them outside of those meetings, and engaging in a secure way. From a scalable point of view, you can create different permission sets. So for example, you can say for a new client, maybe I just want them to be able to see the asset map and suggest changes to that. But maybe if I'm doing an annual review for a client, I want them to be able to see a bit more, probably beneficiaries or priorities or the relationship maps. So you can create these different permission sets and assign them to clients depending on where the client is in the journey. And you can, of course, change that over time, even remove access, and you can share reports to the client portal. Instead of emailing it to the client, you can share it via the portal. So go ahead, set up those permission sets and incorporate that into your process. And we heard a lovely story from a client who actually sent a voice note. It was the first client the planner had introduced to Client Portal. And the client said three things. Firstly, they said, thank you for investing in this for your clients. I really appreciate it. And then secondly, they said, I love this. It's so fun. I like going in and adding things and changing it. It's really, really exciting for me. But thirdly, the client mentioned that it actually brought up something for them that they want to talk more to the planner about. And I just love the voiceover, because that's what we want to do. We want to make it more fun, more engaging, visual, that clients are enjoying collaborating, with the portal, but also that it surfaces and highlights these important conversations and gives clients that opportunity to share. So as we come to the end of the session today, I just wanted to say a big thank you for all of you for joining, the Focus Series journey this year, for joining the sessions, for sharing with us how you're using the different features in your practice, and also sharing your client stories. Our goal is always to make financial planning more visual, more engaging, help clients feel empowered to make the decisions that move them forward. So hearing those stories from you just really motivates us and inspires us. This is our final focus series for 2025, but we'll be back in January. We will continue the focus series next year. So again, once a month, same day, same time. But please share your feedback with us. What works well? What would you like to see more of? Any topics that you'd like us to cover in this focus series? And yeah, please keep sharing your stories and your engagements with clients. So we love to hear it. And just before I close up or open up for questions, just wanted to touch on what to expect from 2026. So from the asset map development side, there's sort of two themes that we are working towards. The one is, in those moments where you're sitting in front of the client, how can we make those conversations more visual, more engaging, more empowering? And how do we bring it in a way that keeps that one screen planning that you can move around easily, but keep the clients engaged throughout the process? So you are going to see some development on that side. One of the things is bringing things like priorities into sidebars so you can easily see it while still looking at the map and engage the client on those different priorities. But there'll be other developments in that theme as well. Then on the other side, the other theme that we're working towards in 2026 or just enhancing is we've brought in a lot of new features, but we want to just take them up a level. So how do we make, really enhance the usability, make it even easier to navigate and use and work with clients, together with clients through asset map, target maps, and the full financial planning experience. So those are sort of the two things to expect. But we'll keep you updated in the focus series next year. So please continue to join these sessions or register so you can get the recording. And yeah, share your feedback with us. And thank you for a wonderful 2025.